Morning, all. All right, so news of the day video for all you fine people on the internet for your Tuesday, May the 28th. Starting with Dan Bylsma being named head coach of the Seattle Kraken, the worst kept secret in sports. And this is how it's supposed to work, right? You have a coach in the AHL, he's going to come up a coach in the NHL. Jeremy Colleton splitting from the Vancouver Canucks organization. One of the reasons that people were giving was that Colleton didn't see a chance to get hired as the NHL coach for the Canucks anytime soon, so he moved on. Bylsma gets brought up from Coachella Valley, and I've seen some jokes and some people, having remarks. But when you look at Bylsma's record at the NHL level, it's pretty good. 320 wins, 190 regulation losses, and 55 losses in extra time via overtime or shootout, and that's split between Pittsburgh and Buffalo. So, I mean, his record in Buffalo wasn't great, but whose is? And he had a pretty good track record in Pittsburgh, the 2009 Stanley Cup, and he won the Jack Adams in 2011. So we'll see how things go for Bylsma in Seattle. Keep in mind that Dave Hackstall was there the first 3 years. There was plenty of negativity around Hackstall after the Philadelphia Flyers had got rid of him. But Hackstall did pretty well for Seattle, so I have no reason to think that Bylsma won't be able to have a similar effect. He is a good coach, and again, they've seen him for 2 years in Coachella Valley. They are very familiar with him. He is very familiar with their players. It just makes a lot of sense. Jason Robertson talking about the hat trick last night after the game with Sportsnet, and he credits his goalie coach for that third goal on the hat trick, and said that after that first goal went in, he was just going to shoot it from everywhere all the time. And I don't know why guys aren't more like that, to be honest. I sometimes think that the coaching in the National Hockey League has become so defensive and so defensively oriented that, yeah, guys don't take shots that might go in because, well, I don't know if I want to shoot from here, and I was coached that this doesn't go, and this isn't really a high danger chance. So, like, it just, yeah, it feels like if guys would just relax and shoot the puck a little more, probably go in a little more often. Maybe that's been part of it for Robertson. Maybe he's been overthinking it. He's a very good goal scorer who has not produced like an excellent goal scorer this season. And so maybe he just needs to relax a little bit. So that hat trick last night could bode well for Dallas. But again, Edmonton has some guys that can score goals as well. David Pastrnak kind of took a shot at the NHL, or at the very least a tournament that they're planning on having this coming season. The Four Nations tournament, so it's Canada, the US, Finland, and Sweden. I'm going to be honest, I'm not enthused about it, and Pasternak's reasoning here is really unassailable in that the Czechs win gold at the World Championships, Switzerland wins silver at the World Championships, and he's basically saying, when this Four Nations tournament gets going, I'm not playing in neither are any of the other Czech players, and saying he understands that it's like a short period of time the NHL is trying to put this together, but that if you have some really good countries that don't have a team in the tournament, again, I do kind of struggle looking at the Four Nations tournament to see it as anything other than a warm up for the Olympics. And players aren't going to play as hard in the Four Nations tournament as they would in the Olympics. So I don't know. I don't know how this is all going to go. But Pasta's not wrong. So basically, you picture him with the gold medal saying, can I go to this Four Nations Cup tournament now? Because again, keeping the Czechs out doesn't make much sense. But here's the reasoning, I would think. If you have Czechs in there, then you have to have a team for Slovakia. Well, then you have to have a team for Switzerland, and suddenly it's a Seven Nations Cup. And then Germany too. There are a lot of star players that are not going to be playing in this tournament. So, yeah, we'll see how all of it goes. But I wouldn't say that I'm pessimistic on the tournament. I just don't know that I think it's going to be remembered, for decades to come. It's not going to be like the old Canada Cups. And so we'll see how all that goes. But Pasternak's not wrong. The Czech team would be very tough to beat in that kind of situation. And I think the Swiss, the Germans, you can put together good teams. The other side of it, too, is could you put together a full team of German players from just the NHL? No, probably not. And that's where the NHL would say, well, no, we can't have those players because they're not NHLers. My answer would be, do you want it to be a tournament that shows the best nation in the world or not? So at any rate, again, Pastrnak not wrong. So Oilers talk from last night, and I think it's crazy how Skinner he had a bad game. I'm not going to say Skinner had a good game, But Skinner's played really well in this conference final. I find it amazing how quickly people will go, well, that's it. Skinner's cooked. He's done. That's it. I heard that after game 5 against the Canucks, and then all of a sudden, he was fine. He was good, and he won a couple of games. And so I honestly don't know if they start Pickard in game 4. Chris Knobloch could decide, you know what, I'll rest Skinner for a game. The problem is they're down 2-1. They have to win game 4. And while the Canucks had a hard time with figuring out Pickard in the couple games he played, maybe Dallas wouldn't. So it's not that easy as just going to Pickard. But I'm starting to kind of feel bad for Skinner because, yeah, people turn on him so quickly. Charles Barkley, who is very vocal about his support of the NHL and has often talked about how he likes the NHL playoffs, has at times said he's preferred the NHL playoffs over the NBA playoffs, saying he picked the Oilers in his bracket, and he talks to the guys from TNT, so, Bissonnette and Gretzky and the rest, and saying that he trusts their word, and that's why he's picked where he's picked and who he's picked. And he's very interested in what's going on in the playoffs. And then also took a chance to pat himself on the back, saying he called the Mavericks knocking out the Minnesota Timberwolves. My asterisk to that would be picking a Minnesota team to lose in a playoff setup is kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. And that doesn't matter on the sport. It really doesn't matter on the sport. It's just, and I hate to say it like that, but as somebody who would love to see the T-Wolves win just because it's been such a tough run for them, basically throughout their existence, I see Minnesota and I think, well, they're from Minnesota, so probably not a win. But anyways, so Barkley picked the Oilers. We'll see whether or not that comes through. So game 4 is tonight between the Florida Panthers and the New York Rangers. New York Rangers leading the series 2-1. What's interesting is game 3 had 2.4 million US viewers, and it peaked at, I think they said 3.81 million US viewers. It's a 59% jump from Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Final last year, which was between Florida and Carolina. It makes sense that this would be much more watched. First off, the Rangers are going to attract more eyeballs than Carolina. Secondly, this series is close. The conference final last year, not as much. So the fact that Florida kind of steamrolled Carolina, I can understand how that would, cause ratings not to be great. And so through 38 games so far on ESPN in these playoffs, ratings are up 19% from last season. So again, if you see this progression each year, the NHL starts to get more of a market share. They can charge more for advertisements. The NHL makes more money. And I think everybody wants the league to make more money, right? Because then the players make more money and everybody's generally happy. We pay more for tickets. But either way, 19% increase from last year. Not too bad. ESPN's coverage, I've talked about that before, but clearly they're doing something right to have the ratings up the way they are. There was also an article I was reading today about Kakko being unhappy with being taken out of the lineup as a healthy scratch before being put back in when VC got hurt. My answer to that is good. I don't ever want to see a player saying, oh, no, I was fine with being out of the lineup. I think that was good. That was good for me. I don't want to see a player saying, oh, I totally get why I was out of the lineup. I want to see a player saying that he doesn't understand why he's out. He thinks he can still contribute. He wants to be in the lineup. I want to see a player who says, I think I can score a game-winning goal for you in Game 7 in overtime. So I think Kakko coming out like this, I don't view it as him being frustrated with the Rangers. It's the playoffs. He wants to play. So I think media, and again, I just saw this today, Kakko not happy with being benched or being a healthy scratch. Good. Hockey players should want to play. Soon as you see a guy who's like, I'm pretty good. I mean, the guys are still playing well without me. He's got to go. So I think it's actually a good thing that Kakko's upset. I don't take that as a sign he's going to leave the Rangers or that he wants to leave the Rangers. I do think there's a chance he ends up being off the Rangers next year just because the progression for Kakko hasn't been quite what I think they would want it to be. And I do think he might excel somewhere else where he would get more minutes, he'd get more time. Maybe Seattle is good, for instance, a team that's picked up players that weren't getting ice time elsewhere, and they've produced there. So that's just that kind of thing, just going by what's on the board. And knowing that Dallas, Boston, Oilers, not necessarily, although the Boston Bruins have done a good job with reclamation projects at times as well, I should say. But yeah, so tonight's game, the Rangers up 2-1. If they win tonight, they could go home and try to end it in 5. So Florida has to win tonight. On the Rangers side, Lafreniere, 6 goals, 6 assists, 12 points. Great bounce back game by Lafreniere after the gaff he had in the game before. And I've seen the comments too of, well, Lafreniere is producing now, but he's still not what we thought he was going to be when he was drafted first overall. I remember that draft, and I remember saying he's not going to be like a mega superstar or anything, but he was considered to be a really good two-way player. His game was solid all around, and that at the very least he would probably be around a point per game player at his peak. So, yeah, Lafreniere, 12 points so far in the playoffs. I think he's been very good. I think the expectations when you have that status as a number one draft pick, I think it's sometimes just a little bit too much. Not every number one draft pick is going to be a megastar, but yeah, I think Lafreniere, pretty good player. Barkley Goudreau, 6 goals, 2 assists for Goudreau so far, playing really, really well. Laviolette not being surprised, and for the Rangers, this shows that right now, Goudreau's contract, absolutely worth every penny. Trouba, 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points. I'll be interested to see what happens tonight with Trouba. If he plays any different, he's basically just not wanted to talk about the elbow he threw and says, oh, the game goes really fast. And I think that's some of it. I think some of it is he'll throw an elbow like that because he's out of position. The guy's going around him, and it's a desperate play, but it's a dangerous, desperate play. So we'll see what happens tonight with him and with the Rangers. I don't see Florida trying to get him to drop the gloves or targeting him. These games are way too important now. You're down to the Final Four. You don't want to be engaged in that kind of thing. Igor Shesterkin, 925 save percentage. Fantastic game by Shesterkin. And then I see people going, hey, he allowed 4 goals. He wasn't that good. Seriously? But anyways, like Florida couldn't have put up 7 or 8 with the way they were playing during that game. On the Florida side, you got Barkov, 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points. Absolutely fantastic playoff run by him. But Verhaeghe's really impressed me. 8 goals, 8 assists, 16 points. Keeping Verhaeghe under control seems to be a real challenge for teams in the playoffs. He might be one of the more underrated players. I know everybody talks about Barkov. I totally get that. I do. But I think Verhaeghe is very much an underrated player as well. Montour, 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points for Montour thus far in these playoffs. And Bobrovsky, a 903 save percentage. I think Sergei is going to look to shut things down tonight against the Rangers. He's a goalie that can absolutely accomplish that as well. So yesterday's Memorial Cup saw London beat Moose Jaw 5-4. And Easton Cowan had 2 assists for London in that game. Denton Matejchuk had a goal. So Matejchuk was a first-round pick in 2022 for Columbus. Easton Cowan, of course, a draft pick for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who Maple Leaf fans are excited about. And Cowan hasn't shown anything at the tournament to make anybody think that he's not going to be a really good player for Toronto and soon. Today, Drummondville faces Moose Jaw. Both teams are winless in the Memorial Cup. That game starts at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, so it is a must-win for these teams. You don't want to go 0-3 at the Memorial Cup. I mean, you enjoy your win in your league, which WHL, QMJHL respectively is what we have here. But still, going to the Memorial Cup and not winning a game, that's got to feel kind of hollow. So look for quite the game today between those two teams if you're not interested in the Stanley Cup playoffs tonight. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, including who you think wins this game tonight. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.